What is the best operating system of all time? Not the best one now, not the one that I like the most, but what is the best? What is the most important operating system of all time? I love old rigs. I love old machines. I love old operating systems. I like new ones too. I'm running very new operating systems to produce this show. But is that the best operating system ever made? Is my Linux-based desktop operating system that I love so dearly, is it the best? Now, honestly, I don't know the answer to that. Is an old Amiga the best? Is an old DOS machine the best? Is a mid-90s Macintosh the best? There's so many different operating systems running on so many different pieces of hardware. I honestly don't know what the best is. So I came up with a scoring system. 5 items, 5 areas upon which I'm going to score a wide variety of operating systems, from current operating systems all the way back into the 1960s and 70s. Yeah, we're going the full gamut here. Some of these are open source and free software. Some of them are closed down. Some of them were made by companies that have long since been defunct, with the software and operations abandoned for literally decades. But we're going to go through all of them, and here's the 5 criteria I'm going to judge them against. Now, these aren't necessarily the best criteria to judge an operating system, but I like it, and so I'm going to stick to them for the entire series. That way we score all of these operating systems on the same criteria and on the same scale, and then we can rank them as a list. Which one gets the most points? The one with the most points will be crowned the best operating system of all time. Here they are. Enjoyability. How much I enjoy using an operating system. That's pretty straightforward, right? Polish. How well did the team or individuals making the operating system clearly nail their vision, right? How polished is it? How refined is it? How free of quirky, weird bugs that kind of screw with things is it? How polished is it? The third thing, how immortal is it? And by that I mean, how useful is it today and 20 years ago and 20 years from now? Be it through technical issues or software libraries or connected features, etc. How immortal is an operating system? I feel like that's an important thing. And then the fourth item is, how important is that operating system historically speaking? How much of an impact will that give an OS? And I'm talking specific versions here, not just whole classifications. So like Windows 3.11 would be very different than, say, Windows 2 or Windows 95 or Windows XP. Those are totally different things in this regard. How important was it? What sort of impact did that release have on the world? That's another item. And then there's a fifth category that I call my wild card. And because sometimes when you're using a piece of software and operating system, there are certain aspects to it that are just simply too wonderful or too heinous to discard, to overlook, and they might not fit nicely into those 4 categories. For example, for me, I like it when things are open, when things are well maintained, open standards, open source, free software. I like these things. How well documented are they? How easy is it to continue using them nowadays? There's lots of things that really get me excited about something. And that's my wild card section there. So 10 points to each section for a total of 50 points. Windows 3.1. Specifically, Windows 3.11 Windows for Workgroups. And I thought long and hard about exactly how to present this to you here. Now, most of you have seen Windows 3.11 before, and I've got a fairly vanilla install going here. I thought for a while maybe I'll show you Microsoft Office and a bunch of other tools, including some of the Adobe tools. So you can see here I put Photoshop in here. Not going to show it to you. I've got more games here, like Sid Meier's Civilization 2, one of the greatest games of all time. I'm not going to show that to you right now. Works. You know what? Yeah, I am. I'm going to go ahead and launch that while I talk. I don't have the CD in the drive. Okay, start a new game. So Windows 3.1.1. Why did I choose this one to specifically talk about? Because we are going to be using many I'm creating a game of civilization in order to review Windows 3.1.1. This is the most scientific approach that could ever possibly be taken to it. Yeah, look at this cool system. Oh man, I missed this game. All right, anyway, let's go ahead and we don't even need to minimize it. We'll just push this off to the side because Windows 3.1.1 has multitasking. It's cooperative multitasking, so it's not preemptive multitasking, which means one application going down can just take down the whole system, and that's a negative. That's a negative. But the reality is, if you carefully select the applications you use in Windows 3.1, you can actually have a very stable experience, which a lot of people may not realize because there have been so many buggy additions in Windows over the years. Like Windows Millennium Edition, Windows 95A. There's a lot of systems out there that are just buggy, blue screen of deathy galore. And Windows 3.1.1, Windows for Workgroups, while it is certainly very possible and very easy to crash it, it's actually not too bad in the stability department. I mean, considering it sort of is the ultimate, the end of the Windows pre-95 line. I mean, it is a very different beast than everything that came after it. It is a good representation of what that era of Windows could be. And that's kind of why I chose this here. And I figured, we'll pick from each era of a particular operating system, whatever the best example is of that particular era. For example, there are many different releases and updates and patches that go along with the Win 9X series, Windows 95 and Windows 98 and Windows ME and various point releases in between. And some of them are absolute and utter garbage, but some of them aren't so bad. So we're going to pick and choose the best of them because we want each operating system to put their best foot forward. And of this era, Windows 3.1.1, Windows for Workgroups, is pretty doggone glorious. I mean, not only does it add a lot of networking functionality, which I guess was possible in Windows 3.1 as well, Trumpet, WinSock, and all those sorts of things. But the reality is, it's just really well refined. The team that put it together did a very good job on it. There's lots of UI things about it that you could easily say, well, that's kind of crummy. And you'd be right. There are some weird quirks and nuances, but overall, it is a fast, responsive, not terrible looking system. Here, let's go ahead and try it a few different colors here. All right, let's try the Arizona color scheme. Oh, that's the Arizona color scheme. All right, let's just go ahead and just cycle through these lists. Some of them are kind of funky. Bordeaux, I'm not sure what a lot of these are. Cinnamon, well, that's just very, very red. Holy smokes, would you look at that. You know what? The crazy thing about this to me is Windows 3.1 was really not that uncustomizable. You could do quite a lot with it. You could add a lot of screensavers into it. The After Dark screensaver packs, highly recommended. Get some flying toasters going on in there. But you could have patterns and wallpapers, which are different, which I think is entertaining. Because patterns, let me show you what a pattern is. A pattern, let's pick critters here. See, critters gives you whatever the heck that is. And then wallpaper, let's go ahead and choose arcade wallpaper. Yeah, one of those classic Windows 3.1.1. Oh man, red brick. I haven't looked at red brick. Oh, that's honey. That's honeycomb. I want red brick. Come on, red brick. Where are you at, red brick? Red brick. Boom. That is a red stinking brick right there is what that is. Let's go with the Windows logo. Where's that at? Win logo. Awesome. Beautiful. Did I put any? I got screensavers here. We got flying windows. Let's go ahead and test that. All right. Now there's much to make fun of in this system. Much. But it's fast. sort of stable, has a somewhat consistent user interface that's actually fairly easy to use. It's fairly intuitive. In fact, I would go so far as to say, and I know this is a little bit crazy, in some ways, it's almost more intuitive than what came after it with the new Explorer shell with Windows 95 onward. It's actually not that bad. Ooh, let's do a Starfield simulation. You can't go wrong with a Starfield simulation. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's do a little marquee. Oops, if I jiggle the mouse, it stops. Windows 3.1. That right there is technology, my friends. So I'm actually enjoying using this. I have I'm running this under DOSBox right now, but I actually do have an old PC, an old 486 that runs MS-DOS 5 and then Windows 3.1.1 Windows for Workgroups on it. I don't use it very often, and I'm not grabbing from it right now because I don't have a good mechanism for video capturing that particular device. I could get a good video capture card to convert the VGA signal to something else, but I don't have that. So I'm capturing inside FreeDOS right now. Not FreeDOS, DOSBox. And it runs just fine in there. For the most part, DOSBox gets a little bit weird with share.exe things. Those of you who remember DOS and Windows know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, don't worry about it. But this is really, it's actually nice to have this around. And I'm going to throw this out there. This is useful now. Bear with me. There are fairly robust versions of Microsoft Office, Netscape, Adobe Photoshop, video editing software, all sorts of things, and tons of some of the best games ever made for this platform. And it runs great on low-end PC emulators like DOSBox and many other things, which means that you can run in a very capable way this on anything. Like, do you have a Linux box? Do you have an Android box? Do you have a Mac? Do you have a Windows machine? Do you have a Haiku box? Do you have an OS2 box? Do you have all any? Well, you don't really need this if you have OS2. But if you have any of these machines, you have some way of emulating an old x86, which means you can, at a fairly reasonable speed, emulate this older system from the early 90s. And that's kind of cool. That makes it somewhat immortal, and it never phones home. It never phones home. It never does a software activation check. It never does a software update check because there's no repositories or update servers for Windows 3.x. It just doesn't exist. Which means that it runs nowadays just as well as it did in 1993 and 1994. It just does. In some ways, it actually runs even better today than it did in olden times, which is kind of remarkable. It's amazing at a time when operating systems can actually become defunct when they're just simply too old and servers go offline. For example, go grab early versions of Ubuntu Linux, like the first couple of versions. Most of those repositories are offline, which means here comes the screensaver. Now part of me wishes I would have installed After Dark and a few other things in this one, just so we could have flying toasters going around, but this is almost more epic. But it really is fairly phenomenal. It really, 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 truly is that it can run that well nowadays as well as in old times. And I like that. That, for me, wins a lot of brownie points. That means that it ranks almost as high as you can rank it on the immortality scale because it's just an immortal system. Also, it's got solitaire right here. This is solitaire. It's solitaire. Right now, I have Solitaire and Civilization 2 running. What? I want Minesweeper running? Okay, boom, and I immediately lost. Come on, there we go. Oh man, I haven't played this in for friggin' ever. Holy smokes. I probably shouldn't just sit here and play Minesweeper all day. But it's a very functional system. So here's my thought. By the way, paintbrush, cool. And then let's go here and launch Notepad. Hello. I mean, again, it's a fully functional operating system. There's nothing about this that's not functional. And it's a single user system. It offers very little of any form of security other than nobody's attacking it. And you're probably not running much in the way of actual connected software. I mean, yes, with Windows 3.1.1, Windows for Workgroups, and some additional tools like Trumpet WinSock and a few other things, you can get online with this. Especially if you're running inside of an emulator, you can, emulate an Ethernet card and whatnot, or the like, and you can get online. You can browse the web. You can SSH and tell them, can you SSH? That came out of my mouth, and I realized I don't think I've ever actually SSH'd from Windows 3.1.1. And you can tell them that from Windows 3.1.1. And it works great. It works great. Could this ever replace a modern system for me? No, but that's not what we're trying to find out here. So let's go over here and real quickly, let's see what scores that I'm giving this. Here's what I'm giving it. On the enjoyability scale of, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Because honestly, it is fun to use. This is a fun system to use. Part of that is that it's old and lightweight. You'll notice everything launches instantaneously because the systems this was designed for are so ancient by today's standards that even when you emulate them on mediocre hardware, it's real fast. It runs well with a couple of megabytes of RAM. I have 16 megs of RAM allocated to this right now. 16 megabytes. 16 megabytes. In a time when we have gigabytes upon gigabytes. I mean, the machine behind me has, I don't know, what, 32 gigs, something like that. And this takes up 16 megabytes, and it runs great. There's something enjoyable about that. The user interface is simple but pleasant. It reminds me a lot of some of the old things like CDE and the common desktop environment on some old IRIX machines and HPUX machines and the like. It's got that crisp, harsh lines where it's just a straight line. You don't find a lot of anti-aliasing going on around here. I mean, there's a tiny bit in the video here because I'm scaling the image just ever so, but I mean, there's really none of that in real life, and it's just enjoyable. It's fun to use. It's fun to install some of the best video games ever made in an environment where it's so lightweight and so small. Even after you install Office suites and games galore and Photoshop, you're only using maybe a couple hundred megs, and then it's easy to copy those around, put them up on a file storage server. Here comes the screensaver again. Put them up on a file storage server somewhere, and it runs fantastically well, just gloriously. Going back to that. It just runs so well. It runs so well. Enjoyability is high. Now, polish. I would give it a 7 out of 10. And the reason I give it a 7 out of 10 is that there are some aspects to Windows 3.x series that I feel like never quite hit exactly what all of the Windows user experience teams wanted with it. There are certain applications that you'll use where the UI is a little different depending on, than other system applications, and it's just not 100%. But honestly, even though it's not the most gorgeous system that I've ever seen in my life, it is actually pretty well polished. Give it a 7 out of 10 for that. Immortality, 10 out of 10. No question on this one. It is highly, highly immortal. It runs great in the past. It runs great now. This is going to run well in 100 years. Mark my words. In 100 years, this will be running. It'll be awesome. And then as for the historical importance, it's hard to get a lot more important than Windows 3.1.1 or the 3.1 series in general. So I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's not like the most important. The computer industry would exist without Windows 3.x, but it was pretty doggone important. It impacted so much in the industry and in broader culture. It is critical. I mean, Solitaire and Minesweeper alone, the amount of cultural impact here cannot be understated. 9 out of 10. For the wild card, I'm giving it a 0 out of 10. And here's my thoughts around this. Even though it's an immortal system, even though it is culturally and historically extraordinarily significant, it doesn't do anything that makes your head go, whoa. You know what I mean? It's okay. The screensaver is winning me over right now. It does. It's not open source, and it should be. Microsoft has long since abandoned this product. They don't sell it anymore. You can't buy it anymore. I mean, maybe old stock from like a used shop or on eBay or something, but Microsoft's not earning any money on this. There's no real reason for this not to be open source at this point. If this were open sourced under almost any license, BSD, Apache, GPL, whatever, I would possibly give it a 10 out of 10 in the wildcard section, because that would be so important to take something so culturally significant and open it and make it that much more free and to be able to learn from it. That would be phenomenal. But because it's entirely closed down, and it doesn't really have any any extra thing, any oomph to make me go, whoa. This is different. This is special. I got to give it a 0 out of 10 for the wild card. But again, you look at the other numbers. The other numbers are quite good. It is an enjoyable, polished, highly important, and totally immortal system that, honestly, it might be my favorite Windows. I don't know that for sure. We're going to go through and really, really evaluate that. But as far as Windows go, it might be my favorite. Now, with a total score of 34 out of 50, I think it's nearly impossible for this Windows 3.1.1 to be crowned the best operating system ever. However, being as this is the first one we've reviewed, it is, as of this moment, the most highly reviewed operating system in Lunduk Show history. So as of right now, Windows 3.1.1, Windows for Workgroups, is the best operating system of all time. We'll see how this goes as the weeks go on. You'll notice I didn't really touch on DOS much. I really stayed clear of the DOS-related parts of that. And I thought about this long and hard, because Windows sits on top of DOS, right? Whether you have MS-DOS or PC-DOS, or though there's issues related to that, because, yeah, anyway. Windows 3.1.1, is it Windows 3.1.1 that had a check in it where if you launched it on DR-DOS from Digital Research, it popped up a little thing that says, hey, this ain't going to work good. Microsoft got in a lot of trouble for that one. There was fireworks. Anyway, there's also FreeDOS, though you don't really use FreeDOS for running Windows. But there are multiple DOS-based operating systems, and you can run Windows on many of them. But in my mind, they're very distinctly different things. While you can have DOS running in Windows 3.1.1 and Windows 3.1.1 on top of it, they're separate. So I'm treating them separate. I'm treating them like they're totally separate things. We'll have some specific DOS-based videos later where we're going to score DOS-based systems on a lot of these same criteria. And I honestly have no idea how those are going to be scored. So, all right. There we go. There we have it. I think we've got a definitive result for Windows 3.1.1 being the best operating system ever. Look, it's got a calculator, guys. Look at this calculator. Look at that. Look at that beautiful calculator. Forget that. Look at the clock. Look at this clock. Really? That's analog. There we go. That's the clock I remember. Let's make it huge. Yeah, baby. That's a clock. This in-depth look of Windows 3.1. I am highly abused by this. It's brought to you in part by Pogo Linux, who make the amazing machine behind me that you can see throughout the majority of this show, but not right now because their logo's up. That is way too powerful to be running Windows 3.1, but I'm running it on there anyway because I've got it and I can. Go to pogolinux.com. It's phenomenal. They make this rig right here, which you can't see it very well at the moment. But can I scoot this over? No, I can't. I can't scoot it over. But it's right here. Look at some of my other videos. It's fantastic. This machine back here is called the Tempest. It's an absolutely fantastic, big, giant desktop tower. You can configure something similar to that with the workstations over at pogolinux.com. Go check them out. You can put Linux on everything. It's Pogo Linux. It's what you do. Yeah, and with that, I'm going to head off into the sunset and start getting ready for round 2, which I will be reviewing for the best operating system in the world,